Module 2, Lesson 6, Python Functions. In this lesson, we are going to look at what we call functions. And the way you can think of functions, you can think of them just like features that help you to reuse your code over and over again. Suppose you want to find the average of students. Let us say just start with an easy example. Let us say 2 students. You want to find their average today, tomorrow. You know they are changing in height. But now suppose again tomorrow you'll be required to write the same exact code that you wrote today in order to find the average. So functions help us to avoid this writing of code over and over again. The only thing you are required to do is write all this and then put it in something like a bucket, and once you require again to do this operation again, you're only required to call that bucket. Think of it like that. Now let us say, suppose I want to find the average. I can just write, and the way you define a function, use this def keyword, and then the name of the function, which will be in this case find average. I just put an underscore right here to help us define our code well. And let us say this function takes 3 arguments, a, b, and c, and of course it finds the average, and average will be equal to a plus b plus c, and then once you find the sum, of course you have to divide by 3, and the way you fetch the value of this average that you have gotten in the function, use a return keyword like that, and then you say return average. Now if I come down here, let me just use a print statement, and I call my function by writing find average, this average, and now let me say I pass three height of the student here. Let us say 45, 20, and maybe let us say 56. This is just an example. And so if I run this code, you'll find that down here it prints for us 40.333, I don't know, 6. So suppose, let us say I want to define function that will help me to find the average of students. Let us say there are about 50 students, 60. I'm not sure of their number, but I want to have a function that will help me anytime I require to find their average. I just call this function and I pass in their values, and it returns for me an average. How can I do this? Let me first comment this guy out here, and down here, the way you can do this, think of this like, in this case, you have an undefined length. I suppose a list will be good for this case, and hence let us say we'll be passing here student marks. And now what you want to do, since this will be a collection, rather let me say a list of marks, what you want to do is say average equals to, and now remember, while you are using list, we have an inbuilt function known as sum, which can ease our task for finding the students marks. And now after finding the marks, you can use again a function known as len, which finds the number of the students, or rather the number of the values in that list. In this case, we'll find the sum in the list and then find the number of the values in that list, and so we take sum over the number of values in that list, which will give us the average. And so the last thing I'm required to do is just say return average. Then down here I can use the print statement again, and now I'll just call my function find underscore average like that. Let me just define a list here so that we can be able to understand easy. Let us call this student marks. this should be students marks. Let us say maybe the first student got 50, the second student 46, the third student 78, the fourth student maybe 90, the next student maybe got 89, and maybe the last student got 69. And so the only thing I'm required now is to pass this list inside my function here. And if I run this code, you see down here it prints for me the average marks of all these students. And the cool thing about this, my second example, is that this function here, right here, does not take a constant number of arguments. This value that we are passing in these brackets here is known as argument. It takes a list, or even let's say a tuple, which can contain and define number of values, which is a good thing. And suppose, you see with this function, suppose I want someone who comes to my code and wants maybe to find average. I want him to understand how, or rather what my code does. In this case, you can use the 3 double quotes to define what your function is. This defines simply, or rather explains what your function does, but this code, what I write inside here, is not executed. It's just some words to explain what my function does. And in this case, I can write executes, or rather finds the average of the students. That is cool. And now if again I run the code, you see it prints the same results, but now at least I have something that tells someone who comes to see my code what this function does. And again, there's some cool thing I can do with the function. Suppose, for example, I want my function to take undefined number of values, but in this case I'm not going to use a tuple or even a list. The way I can do this, I just need to pass an asterisk here. And now after passing an asterisk here, let me just comment this out here. So now I've passed an asterisk here. If I come again and in this function I pass my values, let us say 50, 56, 78, 79, 90, 69. If I run this code again, you see down here it prints 70.33. And the cool thing with this now, I've not used a list, neither have I used any sequence such as a tuple or a dictionary. The only thing I've done, I've added an asterisk here, and now I can pass any predefined numbers of values that I want. So this asterisk here simply tells this function you can take as many arguments as you wish and run this code on those arguments.